I never thought I'd be the type of man to write something like this. I always saw myself as loyal, or at least I convinced myself I was. I loved my wife, or at least I thought I did. We've been married for 4 years. No kids yet, just the two of us in a quiet apartment in the city. She's everything people say a man should want: beautiful, smart, grounded. But sometimes, love gets lost in the routine. A few weeks ago, she had to travel for a 3-day women's conference. Nothing unusual. She's always been passionate about empowering other women, and I admired that about her. But that weekend, something shifted in me. Maybe it was the silence of the apartment, maybe it was the 2 beers too many, or maybe it was just my own emptiness catching up with me. I couldn't stop thinking about how things between us had changed. We barely touched each other anymore. Conversations were short, routine. Sex? Maybe once every 2 months, and even then it felt like a chore. I didn't want to cheat. At least not in the way people normally do. I just wanted to feel wanted. That's how the idea started, harmless, at first. Curiosity. I opened an incognito browser and typed in discreet escort service near me. The results came fast. One site, in particular, stood out. Professional, anonymous, no names, no questions asked. I browsed through profiles, trying to convince myself this was just me looking. Just a fantasy. But the more I scrolled, the more I felt my restraint crumble. Within 30 minutes, I'd made the call. The woman on the other end had a soft, husky voice. She sounded confident. Calm. Like she'd done this 100 times. I gave her a fake name, Jason, and booked a hotel room for 9 p.m. It felt surreal. Like I was watching someone else make these choices. I couldn't believe I was doing this. My heart pounded as I changed my shirt for the 3rd time, staring at myself in the mirror like I didn't recognize the man looking back. There was no turning back now. 9 p.m. came faster than I expected. And when I heard the knock at the door, I felt my soul leave my body. I opened it. And that's when everything changed. The hotel was one of the nicer ones in the city, nothing too flashy, but discreet enough for what I was about to do. I booked a suite on the 7th floor. The air in the room was crisp and cold, the lights dim just enough to make the guilt feel heavier. I paced, checked the minibar, changed the TV channel 3 times, and ended up sitting at the edge of the bed, checking the time every 2 minutes. 8:47 p.m. My palms were sweaty. I must have checked the mirror 10 times, straightening my shirt, smoothing my hair, trying to look. What? Presentable? For a woman I was paying to pretend to want me? It was pathetic. I knew that. But it didn't stop me. 8:58. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I'm here. Room 714. I swallowed hard. My heart was thudding in my chest like a war drum. I typed back, yes. Doors open. Then I stood there. Waiting. Seconds felt like hours. Then knock knock. I didn't breathe. I walked to the door as if in a trance, my hand hovering over the handle. I opened it slowly. And froze. For a full 5 seconds, my brain couldn't process what I was seeing. There she was. My wife. My actual, real-life wife. Standing in the hallway. In a black trench coat, heavy makeup, red lips, and high heels I'd never seen before. Her expression didn't change. Not immediately. She looked at me like I was a stranger. Like I was just another client. It took both of us a moment to react. I stammered her name. Tamara. Her eyes widened just slightly. And then something shattered. In both of us. She pushed past me into the room, closing the door behind her. "You've got to be kidding me," she whispered. Her voice was trembling, her hands clenched into fists. You hired an escort while I was gone? And I was the one who showed up?" I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I had no idea what to say. No excuse. No lie could undo this. She ripped off the trench coat and threw it on the floor, revealing a tight black dress underneath. "So this is what you do when I'm gone," she snapped. "This is who you really are." "Tamara, I didn't know it would be you." She laughed. Not a happy laugh. A bitter, broken one. That's supposed to make it better? Silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. The night I thought would be full of secret pleasure turned into the most humiliating moment of my life. And hers. I stood there, barefaced in my shame, while my wife, the woman I vowed to honor, looked at me like she didn't even recognize who I was anymore. But nothing could have prepared me for what she said next. "I didn't come here by accident," she said coldly. "I knew exactly who requested me." I felt like the walls were caving in around me. My ears rang. My throat was dry. I stared at her, my wife Tamara, trying to understand what the hell was happening. "You knew?" I finally managed to say. My voice sounded weak, almost childish. She crossed her arms, jaw tight, eyes glistening with rage, and something else hurt. "Of course I knew. You used your real phone number, genius. Booked the room with your own damn credit card. You really thought you were being slick?" I blinked. I hadn't even thought of that. I was too wrapped up in my own fantasy to realize how sloppily I'd gone about it. But that wasn't the most shocking part. "You're telling me you're actually an escort?" I asked, disbelief lacing every word. Tamara's expression shifted, less anger, more pain now. She looked away, then back at me. "No. Not like you think." "Then explain it to me," I snapped, my shame quickly turning into defensiveness. "Because from where I'm standing, you're dressed like—" "Don't you dare finish that sentence," she barked, pointing a finger at me, her voice cracking. "You don't get to judge me. Not tonight." I stepped back, stunned by her fury. "Then help me understand. Please." She sighed, the fight draining from her shoulders. She walked over to the window and looked out, like the city lights could somehow give her strength. "I lost my job 6 months ago," she said quietly. "The NGO let me go. Funding dried up. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd panic. We were already fighting about money. You kept saying I didn't contribute enough." I opened my mouth, but no words came out. "So I started looking for ways to make ends meet. Secretly," she continued. "I stumbled across a private agency that didn't require nudity or sex, just companionship, conversation. Men who wanted to feel heard. I screened the clients carefully. Wore wigs. Used fake names. I never crossed certain lines. Until tonight." My heart sank. "Why tonight?" She turned to face me. Her eyes were full of tears, but she didn't let them fall. "Because I saw your name in the request. I wanted to see if you were really the kind of man who'd do this to me." I felt the weight of those words crash into me like a truck. "You wanted to trap me?" "I wanted the truth," she shot back. "And now I have it." We stood there, two strangers with too many secrets and too much pain between us. "I was lonely," I whispered. "I felt invisible. We haven't touched in months. You don't even look at me the same anymore." "And you think I haven't felt the same?" she said, her voice trembling. "You think I didn't feel like a ghost in my own home? You think I like becoming someone else just to pay the bills while you drown in your own self-pity?" The room went quiet. For the first time in a long time, we saw each other clearly. Not as husband and wife but as two broken people who had both betrayed each other in different ways. I didn't know if we could come back from this. But I knew one thing. Nothing would ever be the same again. We didn't speak a word on the way back home. The hotel room still smelled like perfume and bad choices, but it was the silence between us that was unbearable. Tamara picked up her trench coat, slipped it on without looking at me, and walked toward the door. I followed, helpless. In the elevator, we stood on opposite sides like strangers. Her eyes never left the floor. Mine kept shifting between the flickering numbers and the wedding band on my finger suddenly feeling heavier than it ever had before. We drove home in silence. Not even the radio dared to play. When we got inside the apartment, she walked straight to the bedroom, locked the door, and left me alone in the living room. I sat on the couch, still wearing the same shirt I had picked out hours earlier to impress another woman, never imagining it'd be my wife who would answer the knock. The shame hit in waves. I cheated. There was no other way to say it. Even if no sex happened. Even if she turned out to be Tamara. I still crossed a line. And I didn't just cross it, I booked it, planned it, and showed up dressed for it. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat there, staring at the dark ceiling, listening for any sign of her crying, moving, anything. But the room stayed silent. In the morning, she walked out dressed for work, at least, what looked like work. Maybe it was another booking. I didn't know anymore. She grabbed her bag, didn't even glance my way, and left. That's when it hit me. She wasn't angry anymore. She was gone. Something in her had detached completely. The woman who used to kiss me goodbye, who used to remind me to eat, who used to leave me notes on the fridge, she wasn't in that body anymore. I had killed her with my betrayal. I spent the rest of that day and many days after spiraling. I replayed that night in my head 1,000 times. Her face at the door. The disbelief. The pain. The humiliation. And then. Her confession. That she'd lost her job. That she was doing this for us. That I was too blind to even notice. But the worst part wasn't the guilt. It was the trust. It had died that night. Quietly. Permanently. We slept in separate rooms for weeks. Spoke only when necessary. The little smiles, the shared laughter, the random texts in the middle of the day. All gone. Replaced by this thick, bitter tension that poisoned every breath we took under the same roof. And the questions wouldn't stop tormenting me. How long had I been failing her? Would she ever forgive me? Did I even deserve to be forgiven? The man I was that night, Jason, the man who paid for a stranger, he destroyed something sacred. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to fix it. 3 months passed. The days turned into a fog of awkward silence, cold meals, and two people living in the same house but walking on opposite sides of an emotional war zone. I tried to reach her a few times, small gestures, coffee in the morning, a folded blanket on the couch, an apology scribbled on a torn sheet of paper. But she didn't bite. Tamara had locked herself behind a wall, and I had no one to blame but myself. Then, one evening, I came home to find her wedding ring on the coffee table. No note. No goodbye. Just the ring. I didn't panic. A part of me knew this was coming. But I also knew I couldn't let it end like this, not without facing the truth, all of it. So I drove to her sister's place where I suspected she'd gone. And she was there, sitting on the porch, arms folded, eyes guarded. "Why didn't you just talk to me?" I asked, voice low. She stared at me for a long moment. "I tried, Jason. So many times. But you were always busy or too distracted. You didn't see me." "Not really. I felt invisible in my own marriage. So I decided to test you. Not because I wanted to trap you, but because I needed to know if you were really gone. The words hit like bricks. Wait, I said, stunned, you're saying that night was planned? She nodded slowly. I saw your inquiry come through. And yes. I took it. I had to know. My stomach twisted. So you never worked as an escort before that? No, she whispered. I lied. I wanted you to feel what I felt, abandoned. Replaced. I had lost my job, yes, but I was scraping by doing online tutoring, freelance editing. Anything to stay afloat. I only pretended to be someone else that night to confront you with what you had become. The pain in my chest felt unbearable. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. I didn't want it to come to this, Jason. But I couldn't recognize the man I married anymore. I broke down. Right there on the porch, in front of her and the universe, I cried. For the love we destroyed, the trust we burned, and the us that once was. I'll sign the papers, I said softly. You don't owe me anything. But I'll never stop being sorry. She nodded. I know. We didn't hug. We didn't kiss. There was no dramatic scene. Just quiet understanding and acceptance that what we had was over. Now, I sit alone in a small apartment with too much silence and too many regrets. I look at the man I used to be, and I hate him. Not because he hired an escort, but because he forgot he already had a woman who once gave him her whole heart. So, to every man reading this, don't make the mistake I did. Don't wait until your wife becomes a stranger to realize how badly you failed her. Don't ignore the small signs. Don't let your ego speak louder than your love. Because some betrayals leave scars too deep for even time to heal.